Hi, my name is Dr. Victoria Grinman, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to connect with you. So everyone, welcome. We're doing an impromptu interview with Nicole Kelman, but we call her Nikki. Nikki is one of my dear friends, and I'm so excited to catch up with her today, as well as interview her, because she is a mastermind and really the person that I look to when it comes to the college process and preparing kids for the college process and making sure that they are incredibly equipped. And so today I really want to speak with her. Before I talk about our topic, I want to introduce her. And because I want to do a due diligence, Nikki, I'm going to read off of your bio so I make sure I get every nook and cranny, okay? So Nicole Kelman, you served as the Director of Undergraduate Admissions for 10 years and many top selective universities, including Muhlenberg College, Stony Brook University, which is right over here east of me, Brandeis University and Bentley University. You hold a Master of Science in Higher Education Administration. You're a member of Independent Educational Consultants Association. Leading admissions committees has given you much insight into the decision-making process of several admissions offices, right? You are experienced in working with many different kinds of students, which I definitely know, from academically gifted, students with learning support needs, and student athlete recruits. You have been the Director of Admissions, which is very, very fancy, of a school that I love in New England. May I say the name?
Oh, sure.
Fusion Academy. So a lot of you parents know that I speak about Fusion Academy often if it's appropriate for your child. And that's how you and I met in Boston when I lived in Boston. And you have a passion for counseling families through course selection, school decisions, the college process, while also sharing your expert knowledge on how students are evaluated. You strive to make the education decision process fun and worry-free for families. And let me say, you are fun, which is why you excel at making it fun.
Try to make it, it's such a stressful process. You got to try to bring in the fun as much as you can.
I always say levity is key, because if you can't laugh at it, it'll be a problem.
True.
So welcome, Nikki. I'm so excited. Today's topic is quite literally how to support children, teenagers, or young adults through one of the biggest and most important first adult decisions of their life, which is choosing a college journey, and how to empower them versus anything else, like being coercive or anything else. So I'm so excited to talk to you about that.
Yes, absolutely. You know, I feel like that's a great way to try to frame what this process is going to look like. This truly is the first major adult decision that a young person has to make, is choosing where they're going to spend the next 4 years after high school, and how is that going to open up doors for them beyond as well. And so kind of approaching it from that perspective of, it's not this daunting thing of just checking off boxes. It truly is a journey of making this decision, and you know, what people in their lives are going to help navigate that process for them in a positive way, so that they feel confident in their decisions. So there's definitely strategies that I recommend with my students.
I love it. And before we get there, I just want to share how prevalent it is that I work with parents and kids, and like this process, I just remember it being like kind of an exciting, I mean, it was a little bit nerve-wracking, but it was exciting. Like I knew I was going to go to college. I was a good student, right? But now I feel like the times are a little bit different than when you and I went to school.
Very different. Well, we had paper applications back in
and
the
we
day.
didn't have the social media either.
No. Yeah.
So
very different.
Yeah, we had paper application. Do you remember paper applications?
And fill it out every time for every school, and then send it in the mail. Yeah, good penmanship was a thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Good penmanship. I remember like the printer was like, my mom was like, we're using a lot of ink here. So the process is completely different, and there's so much competition. There's so much pressure, I think, on parents and kids of how it looks, where you want to go. People are, maybe I sound old, but like I've got people I work with, in their teens having like bed decorating parties, like where was my bed decoration party?
Yes, there's become a lot of fads around it as well. Absolutely. I mean, but everything is, you do it for the gram, you know, I guess that's kind of where it's come up. But I love that. I love that it's being celebrated as well. I think, you know, there's obviously pros and cons to all of it, but, you know, these kids are working their butts off, you know, getting through this process, and it should be celebrated, and they should be excited about where they're about to spend the next 4 years of college. Because I think back in the day, college was more transactional. It was kind of, you know, okay, where do I go for 4 years to work hard, complete my work, get my degree, and then go on and get a job? You know, I'd say probably over the last 10, 15 years, it's become more of an experience. And that's what you're paying for as well when you go to college, right? You know, you're paying for more of an experience beyond just the education that you're receiving. So it's kind of these two parts. When I work with my students, I always talk about, well, what school is going to be the right academic fit for you to be successful academically? And then what's going to be the right personality fit for you to really have the appropriate foundation and community to be successful in the future outside of just academics. So there's kind of these two parts of trying to, you know, find the right balance. And what I always explain to families is, we live in the United States, where the variety of colleges is the best thing that, you know, we have. Not every country has that. So let's take advantage of it. You know, I think many of your clients and my clients are located in the Northeast, and unfortunately, in the Northeast is where it's most competitive, and most families in the Northeast have really only heard of maybe the top 50 to 100 colleges in the country. Well, I'm here to let you know there's over 3,000 colleges and universities in the United States. 3,000. So I always tell families, why are we focusing so much on trying to get our students admitted into the top 50 or 100 colleges when there's, you know, almost 3,000 additional schools that cannot wait for your student to apply? You know, let's find those right fits. But there's so much great variety. You will find the right fit. Your students will be admitted. It's just a matter of strategizing and making sure you're getting the right counseling and navigator. I see myself kind of like a coach through this process. You know, I'm going to give you the ball, and then I'm going to help you navigate through this process. And it's not easy, but taking advantage of resources, being here today to listen to this talk is the best thing that you can do.
I love it. You know, even as I'm listening to you, and we've been friends, I'm learning something new, because, you know, when we were doing it, and I can only reflect on that because I'm not a college counselor, I was like, okay, I know exactly, you know, where I want to go. I know what the Ivy Leagues are. I know where I think I want to go to grad school. And there was no talk of this like personality fit. Had I known, and so talking to someone like you who has the in around not just the academic, but also the personality, because nowadays we know that being in a place where you feel like you belong, being in a place where you feel like you can really make friends, being in a place where it's a good fit for who you are, whether it's a small college, like it's more than just big or small university. You're talking about like colleges and universities have personalities. And so it's really like doing a matchmaking. Is that it?
I feel like the college matchmaker. Yes, that's what I do. You know, it's funny. And I feel like I've figured out over time, yes, I have, you know, a wonderful career where I spent, you know, 10 years working in college admissions and then 3 years working in high school admissions. But what I found over time is my superpower, if you will, is kind of this matchmaking component of really being able to meet a student. And within the first, you know, 30 minutes to an hour of meeting the student, I already know, you know, what colleges are going to be the right fit for them. And that's what my expertise, I guess, brings to the table as well. But, you know, there's so many different folks in the area that provide great resources. But I love that. I love helping students find the right fit school. And it's not just about applying and finding the right fit school, but it's also about retention. You know, you want students to want to stay there for all 4 years and not want to transfer out. And then it's also about graduating on time. You know, are they going to be able to pursue everything they want to pursue within those 4 years and still get their diploma on time? Those are kind of the two additional pieces that people don't think about when applying to college. So, you know, we're working on those pieces too. That's part of what I do.
Let me ask you, one of the main challenges that we find in doing work with young adults, and like I'm working with parents, is what is the balance to strike in terms of helping young adults who may, you know, some of them want to be independent and do the research. Some of them kind of regress in those years and they just want to go back into the fetal position and like never leave home, but still have the college experience. They don't want to do anything. And all of that is fine. Like, we're not judging, right? Like, the growing up adulting process is a hard one for so many. but I really want to talk about some of the tips that you have for parents who are really struggling to know how much they should be hands-on, and what are the things they should be hands-on about, and then what are the things that they're worrying about but they don't need to, for the purpose of empowering their kids as opposed to forcing or coercing them.
Absolutely. I think, you know, there's so many common misconceptions in what matters and what has weight in the college admissions process. I think, you know, one of the biggest ones I hear all the time is my college essay has to be perfect because that's going to decide if I'm admitted or not. And that could not be further from the truth. I would say, you know, from my experience in admissions, working in selective admissions, the college essay probably only moved the scale in admit or not admit maybe 10% of the time. It really was not a huge piece of the process. Yes, it could make a difference, but very rarely did it change the admissions decision based off of the academic performance of the student. So I don't think it has as much weight as, you know, it is kind of out there, you know, and a misconception. But I would say, you know, one of the styles that I have in my private counseling practice is I really want to empower my students to be independent through this process because it's their decision. I always use my family as an example. Love my mom, but she used to always say, we are going to apply to college, we are going to get in, and we are going to go to college. And I'm like, no, like, yeah, I'm going to college. And so I think, you know, with the parents, obviously you're paying for college, so you do get to have a say in, you know, how this process goes and where your student goes to college, but you're not attending, they're attending. They have to spend the 4 years there. So I think it's just a matter of where do they feel comfortable? And the best thing you can do obviously is go visit to get a sense of, is that student comfortable? But as far as, you know, empowering students, you know, this is all about skill building. This is kind of, again, the first time in their life they're making a major adult decision. And when they go off to college, unfortunately, mom and dad can't go with them. And I know that that's really difficult to wrap your mind around, but I think that there needs to be a little bit of trust in this process that students will make the right decision with the encouragement from the adults in their lives, but they do have the tools to be able to complete this process on their own, utilizing your school counselor or a private consultant like myself, if you are able to hire one. I mean, any resources you have in your life, you know, obviously the internet is phenomenal now. We did not have a lot of these search engines that are now available. So there's a lot of free search engines where students can do research on their own. They can utilize social media to get a sense of the community and culture of each of the campuses that they're applying to. It's just outstanding how many resources are available for them. But students want to do this. This is a cool, fun thing. Like, this is where they're going to be spending the next 4 years of their lives. So, you know, with my students, I find this is something that they're interested in. The students where I find that there is a lack of motivation, it tends to be that there is a lack of direction as well. And so with those students, I kind of take it back and I ask them the question, well, why do you want to go to college? I think that, you know, that's a question that is not asked to many of the families here in the Northeast because it's just assumed. It's kind of, well, that's the given. That's the next thing that you do is you go to college, but you don't have to. It depends on, you know, what is your, you know, next direction. I consider myself a college counselor, but I will gladly steer a student away from college if I don't think that that's the appropriate next step for them, or if they want to take a gap year, which is becoming a lot more normalized now as well. So there's a variety of next step options where students will still be successful and maybe they still choose to pursue college after that. So that's okay too. But I think it's just a matter of making sure that there's some type of motivator. So if a student is 100% set, they want to go to school for pre-med or they want to do engineering, wonderful. But I think most students have no idea what they want their next step to be. The #1 declared major of incoming freshmen is undecided, and that is okay. So you have a lot of time. I think that there's the overwhelm that I hear from my students is like, oh my God, I have to decide what I want to do for the rest of my life at 17. No, you don't. It is okay if you change your mind tomorrow. It's okay if you change your mind a year from now. It's okay if you change your mind day 1 of college. I lived to tell the tale. I changed my entire major day 1 of college. It was okay.
What was your first major?
Oh my God, I thought that I wanted to be a high school biology teacher, Victoria.
What? I did not see that.
I lasted one day. It was not for me, and that is okay. I was thankful that I happened to choose a small private liberal arts college for me, and that was a great fit for me because I was able to change my mind, switch my major very easily, and kind of adjust my direction. I stuck with education. I ended up majoring in psychology. I minored in business, and I had a concentration in education. So still pursued education to a degree, but I was able to kind of use my interest in counseling and helping people with my interest in, business and marketing, and then kind of staying the path of education. I found the perfect fit for me. I know that I'm not the norm, utilizing my degree every day. I feel like you and I don't, fit the majority, but that's okay. But going back to the topic of, how can parents empower their kids? I think it's just a matter of trust, laying out what needs to be completed and deadlines, and kids will get it done. Utilizing those resources online are the best thing that you can do. But I think it's just a matter of, letting them know this is going to be, you're going to be on your own when you get to college. So let's start implementing those pieces now. One of the things I ask, my parents is, who wakes your student up in the morning? Who is setting the alarm clock? Are kids learning how to do their own laundry yet? Are they cooking their own meals? Like, those are things that can be worked on, as juniors and seniors in high school to prepare students for that next step when they go to college too. So I think all of those pieces are connected into starting to treat students like adults, because they're going to be treated like adults when they go to college, and parents won't have access to see their grades or be able to speak to professors. That doesn't happen when students go to college. So it's going to be an adjustment. So why not start making that adjustment as you're going through the process?
Yeah, I see it as like a developmental stage, and it's a developmental stage for the student. And then I'm also thinking about it as a parenthood experience of, it's a different developmental stage for the parent.
Yes.
I'm thinking about the parents who are like, making the kids lunches and throwing the dirty sock at their head in the morning to get up for the 15th time, and, all of that. And for them, it's like a shift. I've got parents saying like, what do I do then? Like, what do I do here? And so they're like, I'm not sure, like, do I, remind them that they have an appointment with Nikki? Do I not remind them that I have an appointment with, they have an appointment? Like, how much do I push them to write the college essay? Do I just leave it to the counselor? So this is, an interesting piece. And when you work with families, give us a little bit of a taste, like when you first sign on with a kid, what are the tips that you give parents as far as like their involvement in the process? And when you have parents who are overly involved or not involved enough, what do you see, and what tips can you give us?
Yeah, it is quite the range. I will say I do have examples for all of those. And I think they're all correct. There's no right or wrong. I think it's just a matter of, what's comfortable for the family. I do have some very mature students that are able to kind of just do everything on their own with no additional direction. And then I have some students that just need a few extra text messages in order to have those reminders. But I would say overall, my students are very organized, which I think, is not surprising. Teenagers do have a lot of resources available to them. They know what the expectations are. If they are college bound, most likely they have figured out some of these pieces on their own as well. So I think that's a little bit of it too, is, finding that balance in communication. I think it's okay for parents to, ask students, what are you working on? But not necessarily sit down next to them at the computer and do it with them. So in my sessions, I work with students on a weekly basis for 1 hour over Zoom. And I work with students all over the country, but mostly in the Northeast. And obviously it's a high pressure area. These students are trying to take the highest level classes. They're trying to be involved in a variety of activities. So I was an overscheduled teenager as well, so I can sympathize and empathize. So I tell students, no problem, like we can work around your schedule. I'm very flexible, as much as possible. But the way that I run my sessions is I really do treat the teenagers that I work with like adults. I give them expectations and they meet them, but I always communicate with parents afterwards. So I send a summary email of everything that we're working on. And what I encourage families to do is, yes, if you have chosen to hire me and have that ability, then the process is kind of taken care of. That's my role. But I still encourage families to have a 1 hour a week sit down family meeting to discuss college. So one of my tips that I would give to families is if you are going through the college admissions process right now, choose one day a week to talk about the college process instead of making it a nightly dinner conversation. I think that that's where it can really make students feel overwhelmed of like, oh my God, like, you know, this isn't something I need to be discussing every day. Because yes, the college admissions process, I think, should be treated like a part-time job, but a part-time job isn't every day. So it's okay if you choose one day a week for an hour to sit down as a family and just kind of review, okay, what have we completed, what's left to complete, you know, where are you in the process, what do you have questions about? But I think, you know, everybody's kind of talking with each other. So again, there's just so many myths out there that I do my best to try to dispel those as much as possible. But, you know, obviously this is a major decision, but I think just treating it like a part-time job is sufficient. It doesn't need to be an everyday conversation topic. And I think that that will alleviate a lot of, you know, the tension that parents might have with their teenagers over it.
Yeah, I've heard a couple of the teens that I work with say, you know, I was so surprised that my mom didn't bring this up, but like, I don't even want, and I say, do you want to acknowledge your mom for that? So it's positive reinforcement. They say, well, I don't even want to bring up that they didn't bring it up because then they'll bring it up. So I'm just not even going to bring it up, you know, and there's a lot of like, you know, and this is where, you know, we get stuck because we want to encourage healthy communication and, you know, reinforcement of like connection during the week, but then everyone's walking on eggshells around the college conversation. So I like that because it's placing a boundary and everyone knows, you know, Saturday nights or however, you know, whatever day are the days that we touch base about what are the things that need to get done. And so I'm hearing you say that that usually helps parents have the perceived control that they would like over the process while you, the counselor, you know, sort of does all of that other legwork. And then tell me more, like what other things do you notice, you know, parents sometimes struggling with, or I want to know, like, what are kids telling you that they say they're struggling with when it comes to how it's handled at home that you wish parents knew?
Yeah. So I hear, yeah, no, I hear stuff like that all the time. I would say, you know, the common piece of or source of anxiety that I hear from my teenagers are around not getting into college. They think like, oh my God, I'm not doing enough. I'm not going to get into college. I'm like, all of you are going to get into college. So I think it's just a matter of reinforcing, yes, you will get in, and trying to decide, you know, what is going to be the best fit. And there's just so many different components of that. You know, yes, we've already talked about academic fit, personality fit, but financial fit is another huge piece of the puzzle that I feel like is not talked about enough. You know, I had a parent ask me, you know, well, wherever my daughter gets in, we will figure out how to pay for it. And I disagree with that because I think that it is a smart, mature conversation to have, to sit down with your teenager while you're starting the process and say, this is what our family can afford. This is a large purchase. You wouldn't just like take your kid who just got their license to, you know, the Rolls-Royce parking lot and start, you know, shopping for a Mercedes, or, you know, like you would talk about budget ahead of time. And it's the exact same thing. And I think that, you know, unfortunately, higher education has become such a large price tag that it requires families to have this sit down conversation around what is the budget for college and talk about that. And maybe there's different options, and maybe the student has to take out loans themselves and they'll be paying them back, or, you know, maybe the parents are able to afford a certain amount. You know, there's just so many layers to that conversation as well. But I recommend kind of, you know, sitting down and talking about those pieces too around what's going to be the right fit. So I think, you know, that can also alleviate some of that overwhelming feeling of like, I'm not going to get in, how am I going to pay for it? I think just having those conversations up front. But I always reassure my students, 100% you're going to get into college. It's just a matter of where, and is it the right, you know, academic, personality, and financial fit for your family. But you can find that out. And that's why students are applying to multiple colleges. You're not just picking one, so it'll be fine. But that's probably, you know, one of the biggest sources of anxiety that I hear from my students. Another piece being, you know, maybe they have chosen a possible career path, but they're worried that they're not going to like it when they get to college. So one of the reasons or examples that I can give to students of a strategy around how to alleviate that is take advantage of the time you have in high school now, where it is an inexpensive time to experiment. You don't want to start experimenting when you go to college. That's when it becomes very expensive. So if you think that you want to be an engineer, but you're worried that you're not going to like your engineering classes when you go to college, shadow an engineer now in high school as a high school student for one day or for 1 week, and see if that's something that you love on the day-to-day. If you don't enjoy what that day-to-day work looks like, okay, let's shift gears. There's hundreds of other jobs that you can look into. Or if you do like that job, that's going to be the motivation you need to get through those difficult classes when you go to college. I mean, college is still school, so you need to really like what you're doing. But those would be the two pieces I hear the most anxiety over.
I love that example so much, because it's really putting the ball back in their court and saying, hey kid, you know, do this work, do this groundwork, and we're happy to support you, but do the groundwork. And so I think that that's great. I want to go back to something that you just said that is just so prevalent to some of my families. If you don't have the answer to this, don't worry about it, although something tells me that you'll have an opinion. You know, I work with a lot of really wonderful, very successful families. And one of the things you mentioned about not taking your kid to Rolls-Royce. Now, I don't know if they're taking their kids to Rolls-Royce, but I do know that many of the kids that I work with, many of the young adults do have the experience of abundance, something that I don't remember very much having, or my friends having, you know, living in a world of great abundance, and also being pressured, even when there's not a lot of abundance, to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, right? And what would you say happens? One, do you have those kinds of kids that do just assume that whatever they choose, you know, will happen? And, you know, that they don't really have, you know, and kids who have a hard time getting motivated to do the hard work because so many things are taken care of for them. When it does come time to work with them, how do you encourage the parents to, you know, pump the brakes and to place those boundaries at this stage of the game, because they are now older, they're not, you know, 5 or 6?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And that's where, you know, I as the counselor try to assess the family dynamic first before I, you know, offer any opinion or guidance. But I think, you know, that might have to, you know, go back to the family on what is the appropriate, and this is where you come in as the expert as well, when it comes to, you know, parenting advice, because there are some parents that have no problem just saying, I'm going to let my kid fail and figure it out on their own. And then there's some parents that don't want to allow their student to fail. So that's a parenting choice. So I feel like I can't talk too much about that, but I, you know, to a degree, I understand both sides. You know, you if you put in all this effort, you don't want to allow your student to fail. But on the other side, if you've tried multiple times and nothing's really working and the student is receptive to your advice, then yeah, maybe allowing the student to, you know, make a minor failure would be the eye opener that they need. So I don't know. You know, I think that both are fine. But I think that, yeah.
So do you think that, and this is really more facetious and probably like, you know, rhetorical, but on a serious note as well, talking from both sides of my mouth, do you think that a minor failure or allowing teens to sort of sink or swim in certain situations is a productive avenue when it comes to this process?
Again, it's just so difficult because now there's a lot of money involved. You know, that's where it's you don't want to obviously allow, you know, room for failure, but I think it's just a matter of, you know, if the student isn't showing motivation to complete the college process, then they're probably not going to show motivation to be academically successful in college. So I think it's an indicator, but for me, I don't just accept that when it comes to my students. I ask, well, why? You know, why is that? And again, it could be this roadblock of, well, I feel like I'm going to fail when I get to college, so I'm just not going to start. Or it could be, you know, I've been told my whole life I'm not good at something, so I'm not going to be good at this either. So I think it's just a matter of peeling back the layers and understanding the why. And, you know, I do my best to, again, not only empower, I love using that word, but also building confidence is a lot of what I do as well. And, you know, helping students identify, you know, I always say that when choosing an area of study, if you are undecided, I always say, well, let's look at your talents and let's look at your interests and how do we combine them to find a possible career path for you. And a lot of students don't even know how to answer what are my talents and what are my interests. So examples that I always use are, well, you know, what do you feel like your family and friends come to you for help on? What are your subjects that you get the highest grades in? That's probably your talent. And then your interests are, you know, what are your favorite subjects? Who are your favorite teachers? What do you find yourself, you know, scrolling through on TikTok? Those are your interests. And so I think, you know, finding how do we, you know, find that career path for them. I mean, as a high schooler, you know, when you and I were back at that age, we had probably only been exposed to maybe 1% of the career options that are out there. So, you know, it's just a matter of opening their eyes to what's available to them. I think, you know, it's difficult as an adult looking back on our time as teenagers and realizing how much we didn't know. And so I think that could be a source of that anxiety, or a source of why a student would shut down and not show motivation, is there's just so much they don't know. So I feel like that's our job as adults to kind of offer some guidance around, okay, well, here are some options, offer perspective, ask questions, you know, see how students feel. And then, you know, allow them to experiment again in high school when it's free. And then, you know, so that would help them figure out their career path down the line.
I love that so much. I know that we have 10 more minutes with Nikki, which I'm sure we'll have many more conversations. But in these last few minutes, I want to hear all your advice. No, I'm kidding. I want to hear at least one or two more things that you wish all parents knew about how to empower themselves and their kids through this process. What's something that, you know, really rings true for you?
You know, I think to reiterate a couple of things I already shared, but the fact that there's 3,000 colleges across the country, and we are in a country where there's a variety of options for students, and you know, that they're just not exposed to that much yet, and they need that guidance and direction from adults in order to have that perspective. But you know, all of your students are going to be successful. It's just a matter of, you know, finding the right path for them. And, you know, I think that one of the pieces that is difficult for me to accept is that, again, here in the Northeast, I think a lot of families are very focused on brand name of colleges. And I think it's difficult to advise around that, but I encourage families to just have an open mind. And I'm very thankful that the families that find me are seeking advice. And so they are generally open-minded, which is fantastic. And I love that about all of my clients. And so I can offer some really important advice on, you know, where is going to be, you know, the right fit for their students. So I encourage, you know, anybody watching to just be open-minded into, you know, the right fit colleges that are available for your students. And even if it's a school that you haven't heard of before, that certainly does not mean that student is, or that school is low ranked by any means. It may just be in a different part of the country, so it has not been familiarized around here. So I think, you know, the best advice I can say is to be open-minded, and to start early in the college process is the best thing you can do, and start asking questions earlier on. I think, you know, another piece that I hear all the time is if a family has a student that really wants to pursue a STEM field in college, and if they didn't, you know, take the right prerequisite courses in high school, that door may be closed for them when they go to apply to that particular program for higher ed. So starting those conversations earlier on, you know, even ninth grade, just talking about the curriculum that student is choosing to pursue throughout high school, talking about the clubs and activities that they're involved in outside of the classroom, and are those clubs and activities helping to propel a student forward in the direction that they'd like to go. So if the student is, you know, has their year fulfilled with 3 sports throughout the year and they don't get much time to do something else, but they do have a particular area of study that they're focused on, maybe they want to pursue business and the school offers business clubs, but they don't have any time to be involved in those clubs because they're involved in 3 sports a year. Maybe we want to rethink the, you know, idea of staying in those 3 sports a year, and try to choose some clubs and activities that would propel them in the direction they want to go. So I think, you know, those are the pieces of how I can, you know, help to adjust, you know, families' way of thinking earlier on. But I think, you know, any families that are choosing to watch this are already doing the right thing by gathering some more information and asking questions. And I don't know if there's additional pieces, but you will all get into college. It will be okay.
I feel like you should have a t-shirt that says you will get into college.
You will get in. It will be
And I
okay.
think, and I think that's so important though, Nikki, because I think that there's this perception that if I don't get into like my top college, then like my life is over, you know, like that
Yes.
feeling, my
Yeah.
life is over. I will never make it. I will not marry the person I want to marry or have the life I want to have. Like it's just, it's an erroneous, irrational thing, but it's a thing.
It's a very
And
much a thing. Yeah.
so hearing you say that is a big deal. Now, tell us, and I would like to know too, how does someone, like really quickly, how does someone find someone like you? Why would someone choose you specifically, but how do you find a good fit for a college consultant? And
Yeah.
then what's typically the first step to, you know, reaching out to you, for example?
Yeah, so obviously students at public high schools are provided with fantastic school counselors. At private high schools, you're probably provided with a college counselor. All of those people work their butts off. They are trying as hard as they can to help your students. However, you know, some schools have very large caseloads for every school counselor, and they don't always have the luxury of time to really get to know your student on a deep level. And that's potentially where I can come in. So there are multiple of me's across the country, and independent educational
Only
consultants.
one you.
Only one Nikki, but there's a lot of folks that have their own private consulting businesses to assist families and kind of be a supplement to your school counselor or your college counselor at your school, to just kind of provide additional perspective and additional time to your student to help them complete the college process on a more personal level. My particular background I have found to be very unique in that I am a former admissions counselor and director of admissions as well. And so I can, you know, share with you how decisions are made and finalized. I can share, you know, what colleges are looking for and why, what colleges spend more time on in evaluating when it comes to all of the credentials that students submit. But I myself have always found very early on in my career that I would rather help a student find the right fit college rather than find the right fit student for my college. And I'm so glad that I get to be able to do that now. And so really getting to know my students and working with students one-on-one is just the coolest thing in the world. And every day is the best day. Like, who gets to say that about their work? It's awesome. So, you know, I love to be able to do that. So if families are interested, so again, I work with students over Zoom all over the country on an hourly basis. And I like to start working with students at the beginning of junior year and help them through the process for 2 full years, junior and senior year, as they apply to college. But I do work with families earlier on just education decision making. So even 8th, 9th, 10th grade. And then after high school, I can work with families on the college side if a student is in need of transferring college, or if they don't know how to find internships or how to declare their major, I can help with those pieces too. So really 8th grade through the end of college are the age groups that I work with. And if families would like to contact me, we can link potentially my website, but my company is New England Education Consultants, and my website is needucationconsultants.com. And I do have an Instagram with a ton of free videos and free advice. You can check that out there. Same handle, Any Education Consultants. And feel free to contact me, and I'd be happy to just have a free phone call to see if it's the right fit, and can move on from there. You know, I would say the other piece that I wanted to offer earlier is that we want to find colleges that love us as much as we love them. So why fall in love with a college that isn't going to love you back? There are colleges that are going to love you back. So let's find those.
I love it. Now, do you have a dating service as well? I'm kidding. We'll talk offline. But really, for everyone watching, I know you, Nikki, for quite some time now. I met you while I was living in Boston, and just your vivacious personality and just your bubbliness, but also your spot on expertise and intellect is just an amazing combination for a teen to work with you, and for parents to just be eased into this process that all of us know is just so pressured these days. So anyone watching, if Nikki, seems to strike a chord, please do reach out to her. I'm so glad that you were able to connect with me. And for everyone watching, this was a interview segment that's really part of a new approach that I'm taking to working with parents called Permission Slip Parenting. If you liked this interview, please like us on YouTube, Talks with Victoria, and I'll have more interviews to come with other people. And hopefully, Nikki, you and I can talk again. I think that we have a lot to talk about and offer to people.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yay.